Hello, and welcome to Addicted to Lacrosse. This is Season 4, Episode 18. This is our regular series finale, or season finale, that is. Today is Sunday, April the 30th, 2017. My name is Graham Perro. With me, as always, are Melissa Daphne and Tyler Fitch. And we have a bunch of stuff to talk about. The playoffs are obviously set, seeing as the regular season is done. And so we'll talk about who made it and who didn't. A bunch of really exciting games this past weekend. And what else is there? Oh, we are going to go over our predictions from the beginning of the season and see how well we did on those in terms of the standings and the annual awards. Obviously, we won't know if the annual awards were correct or not, but we can give what we think now. And we'll give some predictions for the first round of the playoffs. So lots of stuff to talk about. Let's get going. So the regular season, like I said, is now finished. We now know what the playoff situation is. We have Georgia first place in the East, Toronto second, and New England third. Rochester and Buffalo are out. In the West, we have Saskatchewan in first place, Vancouver in second, Colorado in third, and Calgary is out. Now, I jumped the gun last weekend. I said that Georgia had clinched first place overall. They hadn't at the time. It was still possible that Saskatchewan could grab it. That didn't happen. I think the magic number was 1. So if Saskatchewan had won both of their games and Georgia had lost both of theirs, then Saskatchewan grabs first. But that didn't happen. Georgia is in first. So Toronto wins a home playoff date against New England next weekend. That'd be Saturday night. And Vancouver has also won a home playoff game for the first time ever, which is awesome. And they will be hosting Colorado next weekend. I haven't seen what the date is. I'm guessing it's probably going to be Saturday night as well. And yeah, so that's this is the first time ever, as I said on NLL Fact of the Day the other day, first time ever that Buffalo and Rochester have both missed the playoffs in the same year since either of them came into the league. So that's pretty interesting. A bunch of games this past weekend. There were 6 of them. The away team won all but one of them, strangely. But let's get right into it. What was awesome and not awesome during these games? I guess I will start. I have a bunch of awesomes. I don't have any not awesomes because I guess I just enjoyed the game so darn much. I'm going to start off with the end of the Stealth Black Wolves game. And I was watching the Toronto game, being a Rock fan, but I saw on Twitter what was going on in the Stealth game, and I actually left the Rock game to go over to the Stealth game and watch that to see what was going on. And I'm glad I did because that was pretty darn exciting. So New England's up by 2 in the third quarter. This game had gone back and forth all night. And so Vancouver suddenly scores 6 in a row. No, not suddenly. I guess it was probably over 10 or 15 minutes. They score 6 in a row, take a 4-goal lead. Looks like they're in control. Then New England scores 5 straight to take their own 1-goal lead. And this, of course, is much closer to the end of the game. Until Corey Small scores with less than 20 seconds left to send it to overtime. And then after all of those goals, it took over 6 minutes before the overtime winning goal, which was again Corey Small. And so Vancouver wins the home playoff berth. That win also gave Toronto a home playoff berth. So that one game, which was almost the very last game of the season, had playoff implications for 4 different teams. So that was pretty cool. Anyway, very exciting last few minutes of that game, and I enjoyed it. So Melissa, what's your first one?
So my first awesome, we're going to go ahead and go with Mark Steenhouse, who got his 1,000th point this weekend. And so that was pretty awesome. And it's a shame that Buffalo ended up losing. I'm sure you don't think so. But they were just playing really well the first 3 quarters, and then he got that point. And then it was like after that, they just kind of fell off. But that's a side note. But yeah, Mark Steenhouse joining the 1,000-point club is a pretty big deal. So that's my first awesome. What about you, Tyler?
I'm going to go with stealth game, but not the stealth player, current stealth player, but Brett Manning, former stealth player, one of my favorites going back to the San Jose days, scoring a goal in that game coming down in transition. And he's very much a pure defender, and he's a defender with American roots who has never really played box except in the NLL. So he didn't grow up playing with it, didn't have runs on offense when kids are required to play two-way. So he doesn't score very many goals. But he came down, got a great goal, and then had an incredible celebration, little wrestling move there. It was fun to watch. So yay, Brett. And he's been out a lot this season as well. So I was happy to see him in the lineup the last 2 weeks and scoring a goal this time. Next, back to you, Graham.
All right. I should have mentioned I'm wearing my Stealth jersey. This is very old. This is a San Jose Stealth jersey. But just to thank the Stealth for winning and giving the Rock a home playoff game.
I'll quickly say that I'm also going to San Jose Stealth, but this is the Brett Manny rookie jersey. So, yeah, that's my boy this weekend.
Nice. Mine doesn't have a name on it, but I'm going to say this is my Colin Doyle jersey. So there you go. I'm going to go with for my next awesome with the end of the Rock Bandits game. It wasn't quite the same as the Stealth, but as in it wasn't quite as back and forth. But the Bandits had led for most of the game, and the Rock managed to tie it up and then started losing again, and then tied it up and then started losing again. And so, yeah, it was not so much back and forth, but the Rock managed to get to the point where they had tied it but never took a lead. And then finally they did take a lead, and then they scored 7 straight and just put it away. So it was I mean, obviously as a Rock fan, it was great to see that they kept fighting. I mean, obviously it was a game that Toronto wanted to win for their playoff situation. Buffalo wanted to win just because they want to win, but it had nothing to do with their season, which was obviously their playoff hopes had already been closed out. So, but in the first half, it almost looked like they were both in the same situation because the Rock weren't really playing all that hard. It didn't look like. It wasn't until later on that they started to really get into it. Maybe it was, okay, we're down by a bunch, I guess we're done. But down by a bunch was only about 3, so it wasn't like they were getting slaughtered. But eventually they did turn it on. They finally said, let's go and win this damn thing. And they scored 7 straight. They kept the Bandits off the board. The Bandits played a decent game. It's not like the previous game where they got completely slaughtered. But it was nice to see the Rock come back and win it with a very solid fourth quarter. Melissa, you're next.
All right. So I am going to go with the fact that the Calgary Roughnecks finished really strong. They didn't have anything to play for, really, except for pride. And they just really came out strong against the Rush. And it's a shame we didn't see more of this team earlier in the season. But Roughnecks looked really good. And it was just a solid game from them. Offense looked great. Defense looked great. They looked like the team we normally see go into the playoffs. Except they weren't. So, way to go, Roughnecks, for finishing the season really good. And it was kind of cool just the way the fans were. Having been in that situation with my own team, it is nice when the fans are still there and strongly supporting the team. So, and apparently they had over 19,000 fans at the arena, so way to go on that. What about you, Tyler?
Yeah, I'm going to stay in that game. I mean, my pick for the week was Rush because the Roughnecks had nothing to play for, right? They were eliminated the week before, but they came off their bye week looking fresh. And maybe they just need to play every other week all year, and they can stay fresh and dominate people. But it was not a performance I expected to see out of the Roughnecks. Maybe the large crowd was their motivator. Like, hey, let's not ruin it for all those people that came out to cheer for us. I don't know where that many people came from because it was 7 or not like 10,000, 11,000 is like their average. I said 10, but it's like 7 or 8,000 over their average, I think. Like they had significantly bigger group. My first guess was, hey, a bunch of people came over from Saskatchewan or something. Made a little road trip, but looked at the shots of the crowd and it was not a lot of green. It was Roughneck people all the way around that I could see. So yeah,
I think they did have a bunch of people come down from Edmonton and from Saskatoon, but
not 7,000 of them.
No, I think that's probably in the couple of hundred tops kind of range.
Yeah. But I don't know what their marketing department did, but they nailed it. So bravo to the Roughnecks front office, marketing office, whatever it is. I guess Flames are out, so they had no competition anymore for people trying to get, hey, I'm going to go to a game this week and spend a pocket money and spend it on the Roughnecks. But it was nice. Good for them. How about you, Graham?
Yeah, that was my next awesome as well. They had almost 19,000 at Saddle Dome. They said a couple of times during the broadcast it was the second highest attended game at the Saddle Dome and the highest regular season game, because the one that beat it was the finals in, I don't remember what year it was, but
2009 probably.
was it 2009?
Well, the Titans in 2009, and I don't know if they hosted the other one in 05. Oh, what year did they win?
Sure, I can
04.
find it. Attendance. It's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
In any case, yeah, it was second highest game in Calgary history, so that was good, and the ninth highest attendance in the NLL history, so that was impressive. Also awesome, and I guess this is kind of related. We had three teams that had already been eliminated from the playoffs, which is of course Rochester, Buffalo, and Calgary. Two of them won. Those wins were against the top team in their division, and Buffalo almost won. I mean, they played a strong game and they got beaten, but they played really well. So it wasn't that, okay, well, we're out of the playoffs, I guess we start all our second string players and just go through the motions and whatever. They played all three of them played solid games. So so good job to those guys. Melissa.
All right, so for me, I'm going to go back to the Mammoth Rush game, and I'm going to say that Bold and Ward were both awesome, because the Mammoth loss definitely was not on the goalie, and Bold made some very crucial saves, just as Ward did. Bold especially did at the end of the fourth quarter, when the Mammoth were hoping to send it to overtime, and they had the ball and they shot on net, and Bold blocked that last second shot that if he would have missed would have sent it to overtime. So it was definitely good goaltending from both sides. What about you, Tyler?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to where I started today, in the Stealth game. And the Stealth are in the playoffs. Not only are they in the playoffs, because we knew that last week, they're hosting a home playoff game. And I feel like it was a month ago, it's probably like 6 weeks ago, they were in last place or something. They were not in good shape. Maybe they weren't in last place because Calgary was really lagging. But they went from not having a playoff spot secured to battling for a playoff spot to getting a home playoff game. And I am just amazed at the run they're on. If the Swarm and Rush had both won their games, I would say, hey, the Stealth are the third hottest team in the league right now if you did power rankings, something along those lines. They're on a great run right now. I don't know if I necessarily bump either of those two out, the Swarm or the Rush, based on the loss this weekend, especially with the Swarm sitting players. But the Stealth are playing some good ball right now, good team game, and I think they're going to be dangerous. And I'm excited as a Stealth fan for that to be happening. What do you got, Graham?
All right. My next one was, I guess I have to modify it because there was some extenuating circumstances that I did not know about. And I was going to go with Angus Goodleaf and the Rochester defense managing to already, like I said, already out of the playoffs and nothing to play for. And they managed to hold the best offense in the league, and one of the best offenses the league has ever seen, to only 8 goals. And so, that was going to be my absolutely awesome. As it turns out, this is to take nothing away from what they did. Randy Stotts, Johnny Powless, and Miles Thompson were out of the lineup. So seriously strong offensive players playing. Obviously, Lyle Thompson was still there, Kyle Matisse, Jordan Hall, the whole gang. But when you're missing those top 3, as somebody said on Twitter when we were talking about this a couple hours ago, losing those 3 would cripple any other team. And instead, it just turned the Swarm into a sort of an average team. So I don't want to take anything away from Goodleaf and the Rochester defense. They still did a good job, but they didn't hold the entire Swarm to 8 goals. So that's a mostly awesome, I guess we'll give them that. Yeah. All right. Melissa, what's next?
So my final awesome was I got a kick out of how excited Peter McNabb, who was doing the play-by-play for the Mammoth game this weekend, was getting over the game. For those who don't know, Peter McNabb normally does the Avalanche game. And so he has done the Mammoth games a few times, but I think this game just got him a little more excited, and I think he was also getting educated by Teddy, and so he was developing an understanding of the game as they went on, which I don't know that he's had prior to this. And so there was just an extra excitement, and it was kind of funny, and especially how excited he got it. All the goals was good, which, I mean, he does even for the Avs. I like Peter McNabb because he doesn't do the whole total homer thing. He definitely just cheers goals. But it was fun for me as a fan, just kind of hearing that excitement that, hey, there might be a new fan developing as we watch. And so I got a kick out of that. What about you, Tyler?
Yeah, I'm saying the exact same thing. When I turned on that Mammoth game and I didn't hear Teddy Jenner calling the play-by-play, instead he was doing that color commentary of adding in the insight, which he has. It was a pleasant surprise. So good job on Teddy, who usually, if you don't follow, like, he's done the play-by-play for all the other Mammoth home games, and this time he switched seats and jumped in as a color person, and they had a great product, and they did a great job together. It was exciting to hear. How about you, Graham?
I have, I guess it's more of a comment than an awesome or not awesome, but it's related to the same thing, so I'm going to go back to that. First, I didn't know who the play-by-play guy was. I just heard Teddy doing the color, and I remember thinking, well, if anybody in this league can do both play-by-play and color for the same game at the same time, it's Teddy Jenner. But they decided to get a different play-by-play guy because perhaps Jamie Shuchuk wasn't available to do color, so they swapped Teddy. Either way, I thought they both did a great job, and I agree with you, Melissa. The play-by-play guy was certainly enthusiastic, and it did seem that a couple of times he said, "Oh my God, that was the most amazing play I've ever seen," and Teddy's like, "Well, yeah, it was good, but honestly, it happens 3 times a game, so you know." But he didn't say that. But that's kind of the impression I got. So that was kind of funny. But my comment was at one point, Colorado took 6 penalties in a row, and there was no explicit. There's nothing explicit saying this is a travesty and the refs are obviously biased against Colorado or anything like that. But the play-by-play guy said that's 6 straight penalties called on the Mammoth. And then a minute later, when still talking about it, Teddy said the Mammoth took 6 straight penalties. So just a bit of a very subtle difference there about who's assigning blame. It almost sounded like the play-by-play guy who, I'm sorry, I forget his name, Peter, somebody who said?
Peter McNabb.
It sounded like he was saying the refs are calling all these penalties on the Mammoth that they don't deserve, whereas Teddy's like, no, the Mammoth need to stop taking these penalties. So, and given the two of them, I'm going to go with Teddy because he's clearly a lacrosse guy. But I just thought it was interesting that neither of them actually pointed out in either like that they were differing in opinion there. Just the way they said it was subtly different. So I thought that was interesting.
Oh, but that isn't an
Mostly
thing to note because that does imply different. I mean, in the class I teach, that's one of the things we're always talking about is how that subtle subtext you can provide with the choice of words you use. So I don't know that Peter McNabb was assigning some blame to the refs, but he definitely was calling out the Mammoth as well that, hey, it's 6 straight penalties. So I could see that being interpreted both ways. The way you did, that it's like the refs are favoring the other team, but I can also see it, the Mammoth have taken 6 straight penalties, you know.
And if you look over the penalty numbers for the last at least 2 years, I think the Mammoth have been by far the lowest penalized team in the league, to the point where I've seen people saying that there may be some sort of conspiracy to not give the Mammoth penalties. And I don't know why the refs would be involved in such a conspiracy. That seems kind of silly to me. But if the Mammoth have been traditionally, well, like I said, for the last couple of years at least, the lowest penalized team in the league, the fact that they're taking a bunch of penalties is not likely to be the refs being biased against them. And you're right, the McNabb never said anything about that it never said anything to imply that it was the refs calling these penalties that shouldn't have been called. It's just the way he said it could have been interpreted that way. Whereas Teddy was a little more explicit in saying the Mammoth need to stop doing this.
Yeah, I think that's funny what you're saying about that there's conspiracy, because I know that there was actual refs that had a very strong bias against the Mammoth previously. There was some players on the team that they said, yeah, this guy has refed games since I was in in junior A, and he's never liked me, and I don't know why. And so they would, every time that ref did, he'd call penalties, and so I think there might still be some of that. But yeah, that's actually, I don't know if we want to kick off the not awesomes, because I don't have any more awesomes, but that is my first not awesome, is the Mammoth just taking stupid penalties and giving the Rush just man up situation after man up situation. It was just like, what are you guys doing? I mean, unsportsmanlike conduct and illegal substitution, those are completely unbiased, that there's no doubt. Holding, slashing, well, those, if they've been called, I mean, in the holding stick one against Hope, that was blatant. I mean, there were just some bad penalties taken at a very bad time. And so, yeah, I was very, very, very upset with watching my team give the Rush continued power play opportunities. So about you, Tyler, do you have any awesomes, or are you going with the not awesomes?
I'll pass. I know Graham has at least one more awesome. Cycling. So I only have a couple not awesomes. So go ahead, Graham.
All right, I do have one awesome left, and I don't have any not awesome, so I'll get this one out of the way, and then you guys can go. Winning goal in the Rochester Georgia game was just weird. I first saw it on Twitter. I was watching a different game, and I saw the comments on that one, and it was basically the Swarm tweeted, "Did that just happen?" And then Rochester tweeted something along the same lines, like, "Holy cow," but that was it, and nobody would tell me what the heck happened. And then it sounded like the Swarm had scored an own goal, and that was the game winner. And then it sounded like it wasn't actually somebody who scored into his own net. It was just a bad pass that went back. And as it was just a play down in the Rochester end, and Graham Hossack managed to grab the ball and just launched a Hail Mary all the way down that bounced right into the net at 14:59 of a tie game. And so it wasn't an own goal. It wasn't an accident. It was just a great throw, a great shot, I suppose, from Graham Hossack from the far restraining line, which you don't often see. I mean, it's no Nick Rose goal, but it was still an impressive shot. And the fact that it went in with less than a second left in a tie game was pretty darn awesome. So
he did your name proud.
He did. And I do remember tweeting once they drafted Graham Hossack, that just for a second it sounded like I was getting drafted, but it turned out that they had chosen the other guy. And the Nighthawks actually tweeted back saying, well, if it makes you feel any better, it was kind of between the two of you. So I appreciated that. Melissa, what you got?
All right, so man, that makes me want to go watch the Rochester Georgia game. I don't think I got that one. I thought I watched them all, and so I turned the games off. I guess not. So my first not awesome is the fact that I couldn't watch the stealth game. This nice game that everyone's talking about that went to overtime is not available on replay. I want to watch the stealth New England game. So that is my big not awesome, because I can't watch it again. So what about you, Tyler?
I'm going to talk about the Mammoth for a second. And I had this realization that, they've been slipping over the last month or so, not looking too sharp. And I'm trying to think if there's any correlation to the point in the season when they named Pat Coyle as the head coach. Has the team been struggling as opposed to when they just had 3 head coaches, or just 3 coaches with the no-named head coach? But I feel like something has changed recently, and that's something that kind of crossed my mind. I didn't take time to look up the dates as when that happened. I apologize. But since the Mammoth have had a head coach, they just haven't seemed as sharp, and that's not awesome for them. you
I
remember
would
when?
just say it's their normal playoff wind up. They drop off. So I would say it's normal, not necessarily the head coach.
Okay.
Yeah. It's horrible to be feeling that way about my team. But there's too much evidence to support that theory. So, but that
Yep.
goes into my not awesome because the Mammoth went from potentially clinching first place in the West to not even getting second place and dropping all the way to third. And once again, no home playoff game, which is just really frustrating because they were in control of their own destiny. And as per usual, it seems, when they are in control and it's a must-win situation, they just seem to not either care or blow it or whatever you want to say. They just don't pull through. And it seems like those are also the games that they seem to play the worst. Maybe it's, too much pressure and so the team falls apart. I don't know. I just know that as a Mammoth fan, it is very frustrating to watch the team go from potentially being in first to not even getting the playoff game in a matter of 2 weeks. So that's my big not awesome. Boo Mammoth. I wanted a home playoff game because I was really hoping I might actually be able to make it since it wouldn't be on a Friday, which this game was. So what about you, Tyler?
Yeah, the not awesome I wrote was the phrase my picks for the week, but the reality is it's broader than that. It's trying to pick on the final week of the season when some things have been decided and the number one offense sits through their stars, or a team that has nothing to play for has 18,000 fans show up and really put on a show. So those are all great things. I mean, it's great that the Swarm earned the right to sit their players and kind of rest them up because they played the night before. They're in good shape, and that it's great that the Roughnecks could put almost 19,000 or 19,000 people into the stadium on their last game of the season when in reality they didn't have anything to play for, but they still played. So those are great things that happened, but trying to do pick 'em with those variables on the last week of the season is a joke. And it's borderline impossible. I only say it's impossible because I didn't pick them right. I could have easily picked them all right and said it's that simple. Be flippant about it. Said I'll just say try to commiserate on that concept. What's your next one, Melissa?
So my last one was, as I had mentioned earlier, the Bandits offense in the fourth quarter. Bandits were looking really good the first 3 quarters. It was an exciting game. And then it was like they just took the fourth quarter off, which has been an issue pretty much all season, as we've talked about a few times on the show. And so that was a little, really? You guys were doing so good. So to watch that happen was mine not awesome. You have any more, Tyler?
No, I am all out not awesomes in general. It was a great weekend. We now know what's coming next. So as far as like playoffs, etc. So it's a good set of games.
Yay, playoff weekend. All right, you want to kick us off, Graham?
All right, let's go back to our predictions from the beginning of the season and see how we did. In general, we picked what we thought were going to be the final standings in each division. And of the 9 teams, each of us got exactly 1 correct, and that being Saskatchewan in first place in the West. So none of us got any of the teams right in the East, even though the 3 of us had 3 different sets of orderings. I'll just go over them really quickly. I went with New England first, then Buffalo, Georgia, Toronto, Rochester. So basically, I picked Rochester to miss the playoffs and got that right, though they actually finished in 4th, and the rest was a jumble. Tyler went with New England first as well, but then Georgia, Buffalo, Toronto, Rochester, so kind of the same thing. Melissa went with Buffalo first, then New England, Toronto, Georgia, and Rochester. So none of us got any of them right in the East, but we kind of had the general idea. New England didn't do quite as well as the 3 of us thought they would. Same with Buffalo, and Toronto and Georgia did a little better than we thought they would. In the West, we all picked Saskatchewan to finish first, and we all got that one right. Tyler and I picked Colorado to finish second, and we were close. And Melissa picked Calgary to finish second, and wasn't so close. Third, I had Calgary, Tyler had Vancouver, and Melissa had Colorado. I guess, Melissa, you got that one right, because Colorado did finish third, didn't they? I'm just kind of Right up. So you got 2 right, and we only got 1. Good job. And then I picked Vancouver to finish last, as did Melissa, and Tyler picked Calgary to finish last, so he got that one right. Who is counting these things? So you guys got 2 right, and I only got 1. That's what it is.
Nobody cares about those.
Okay. Yeah, so we did all right in our standings picks. Now we'll go to the annual awards, and maybe what we can do here is for each award, we can go over who we picked and who we pick now. And okay, we'll start with MVP. I picked Mark Matthews, and I'm going to change that. He had obviously a great season. I think he's actually my number 2 pick for the MVP, which is kind of too bad for Matthews, because I think this will be the 3rd straight year I've picked him to finish number 2 in the MVP voting. But I'm going to go with Lyle Thompson as the MVP for this year. He just had an outstanding season. Obviously, playing with a bunch of other great offensive players makes it easier, but in his 2nd season in the league, he wins the scoring title. That's pretty darn impressive, regardless of who you're playing with. So I'm going to go with Lyle. Tyler, what do you have?
Yeah, I had picked Dane Smith to continue his success from last year, and unfortunately, he had quite a number of injuries and just didn't put up the numbers. But so at the end of the season now, I'm looking the same as you, as Lyle Thompson is the most valuable player in the league. Leads the league in scoring, leads his offense on one of the greatest offenses the league's ever seen. So yeah, I'm picking Lyle Thompson as my MVP. What do you have, Melissa?
All right, so I had picked Adam Jones. I expected him to continue his great season from last season and do a little better. And then especially with the trade, I thought that might really happen. But I am also going with Lyle Thompson for pretty much the same reasons those two have said. I think Sean Evans, Curtis Dixon, and Corey Small might also be in consideration. Sean Evans, especially with his breaking the record this year, I think he's definitely going to be up there. I think players like Corey Small, well, I was going to say Corey Small would have an issue since Vancouver, my mind's not there. So we're going to just stop that. Where that thought was going, because it's
too improbable that they could make the playoffs, right?
Well, yeah, it's like, wait, no, Calgary was the one that didn't make the playoffs. So, yeah, it's completely irrelevant. But I do think Lyle Thompson, he has just had a huge impact this season. And when you watch the Swarm, it's just his name is coming up constantly. And I think that's really just a sign that he was really playing a prominent role on the team, even if he wasn't scoring necessarily. So you want to kick us off for goaltender, Graham?
Goaltender. I went with Aaron Bold. Actually, all 3 of us went with Aaron Bold, which is not usually going to be a bad choice, and I don't think it was a bad choice this year either. But I'm going to switch that one up as well, and I'm going to go with Dylan Ward as my goaltender of the year. Maybe a month ago, I would have said Nick Rose, but in the last month of the season, Ward has been solid and sort of kept up the pace that he had the rest of the season, whereas Rose kind of fell off a little bit. He was outstanding for the first half of the season, and then kind of gradually kind of started to fall off a little bit. Still played very well, but not quite as dominant as earlier in the season. Somebody pointed out, I don't even remember if it was on this show or somewhere else, but once Brandon Miller came back, Rose started playing a little worse, and that, I'm not sure that makes any sense, but timing-wise, it does seem to be that's about when things started changing for Nick Rose, but I can't imagine that's the reason for it. But in any case, I'm going to go with Dylan Ward as my goaltender of the year. And Tyler, what's up?
Right, like you said, Aaron Bold was my preseason choice. No goalie clearly was the best this year. I read a stat today that I think Ty Belanger finished with the best goals against, best save percentage in the league. And like, he's got the best save percentage, but I wouldn't consider him anywhere in the running because he didn't necessarily start. He did not. Don't even need to say necessarily. He didn't start all season. Like, he kind of came in and took the spot, which he did great once he did. But I wouldn't necessarily consider him for a lot of awards because he didn't start all year. It's kind of a weird criteria, but it's one I'm going with. My pick for goalie of the year, I'm going to go with Nick Rose. He started off really strong, had a few lapses in the second half of the season, but the reality is no goalie scores more goals than Nick Rose. So he should be the goaltender of the year. What do you got, Melissa?
This is true.
I am actually going to stick with Bold. He was my choice before, and I'm going to stick with him. He's played solidly, and unfortunately, my frustrations with the new website was making it difficult to see if I really wanted to change that. So I'm going mostly from memory. But Bold has definitely been strong in net, and so I think Ward and Bold and Rose and I forget who George is are probably all going to be in consideration for that role.
All right, moving on to Defensive Player of the Year. My original choice was Robert Hope, and I honestly don't think that's a bad choice either, but I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to go to a different Mammoth player, and I'm going to pick Dan Coates this year. I was just actually, I have to do the same sort of voting for the IL Indoor staff picks, and I was just writing up some stuff about that tonight. And Coates is one of those players where you don't hear his name on the broadcast all that often, which is true about a lot of defenders. And a lot of times they say if you hear a defender's name on the broadcast a lot, it usually means he's messing up. And the only time you really hear them talk about Coates is if he runs up the floor in transition and gets a goal, which he's done 2 or 3 times. Or if it's something like so-and-so is trying to get inside and just can't get by Dan Coates, which happens more often. He's been a solid defender in the league for a few years now. Now he's the Mammoth captain, and I think he's just a solid defender and had a good year. So I'm going with Dan Coates. Tyler, you're next.
Sure. My preseason pick was Steve Perello of the Bandits. He's kind of been in the running last year or two. And I don't think he had an awful year this year, but my actual pick is not to. I'm going first, but Melissa wrote down first to give her pick away. But Matt Beers of the Stealth, he has looked phenomenal. He's really been an anchor on defense, making good choices, shutting people down, hard hits, kind of setting a tone for the entire defense based on his play, where teams have to know where he is and to worry about what he's going to do to them if they try to run across the middle. And I think this year he's really came into his own and showed some of the brilliance that he's had at times, but he did it the whole season. And good effort by Matt Beers this year. So, Melissa, I kind of gave it away, but go ahead.
All right. So previously I had picked Chris Corbell, but I am also, as Tyler said, going with Matt Beers. He has been really solid in causing turnovers, and he has scored some goals, and he's great with the loose ball. He's just a solid defender. It's like Graham said, usually when you don't hear a lot about a defender, you just tend to overlook them, and that's why it's always hard to pick this role. Also why John Gallant was one of my favorite players, because he's one of those players that you completely ignore, but once you notice him, you start noticing the impact he has on the field. And I would say Matt Beers is kind of one of those players that it's easy to overlook him, but once you start noticing him, you start noticing him. And so he's definitely my pick. What about you, Graham?
I'm pretty sure not a lot of offensive players on other teams are overlooking him at all.
Probably not.
They're looking for where he is and trying to avoid that area. So, and that's a smart play. For the record, Matt Beers was my number 2 choice for Defender of the Year. And okay, we will move on to Transition Player of the Year. And my choice at the beginning of the season was Carson Leung, because I think he's made a lot of progress in the last couple of years. Unfortunately, he didn't play at all this year, so we'll call that a miss. My choice for Transition Player of the Year is Vancouver's Justin Salt. He's been a solid defender transition guy for a couple of years, but I think he really stepped up his game this year and sort of took it to another level. And he plays a solid defense, but he's just always running up the floor. It just seems that whenever there's any kind of transition chance in a stealth game, 90% of the time it's Justin Salt doing it. And I think he's just had a really great year doing that. And so he's my pick. Tyler, what's up?
Yeah, my preseason pick was Jeremy Thompson of the Rush for what he does in the faceoff circle and whatnot. But my pick ends up being at the end of the year, same as you, Justin Salt. For all the reasons you laid out. He matured greatly this year. He's getting a lot of recognition. Stats-wise, lots of points, caused turnovers, loose balls, and pushing the action for the stealth, which would ignite them when they needed it, or generally keep the pressure on their opponents throughout the year, which they've been lacking. The stealth have been lacking for the last 4 years, really. So, yeah, it's fun to see Salt mature, come from being the next to last pick of whatever year he was drafted, 2010 maybe, 2011. But, yeah, I remember going back to the Everett days, and as the kid was on a practice squad, just kind of soaking it all in and getting to learn the game. And this is the end result, is kind of a perfectly matured transition player at this point. So it's good to see. How about you, Melissa?
All right. So I always find the transition player of the year really difficult to pick. Part of that is because many players that play as transition actually are listed as defense or offense with the team. So in some years they weren't even considered for the transition goal or award. And then there's been other years where they have been. So it's really hard sometimes to pick transition players because they're not always listed. I originally picked Jeremy Thompson, and I was kind of sticking with him, but also looking at the stat sheet while you two were talking, it's making me want to change it to Justin Salt. So I think I'm going with Justin Salt. All right, back to you, Graham.
All right. Rookie of the year we'll go with next. And our pick at the beginning of the year was the number one draft pick, which was number one overall draft pick, which was Ryan Keenan. And he had a decent season. It didn't honestly seem to me like it was a first overall draft pick worthy season. But I thought the same thing with Lyle Thompson last year. So what do I know? Now, that's not to say Ryan Keenan's going to score 100 points next year, but yeah, you can't really judge a player based solely on his first season. But there was a whole crop of really great rookies this year. Like I said, in picking my Island or picks, I must have listed about 10 different rookies who had an impact, who could have been listed in the top 5. And I'm going to go with Tom Schreiber. Like I said, there's a whole bunch of players who could have qualified for, say, the top 5. But Schreiber, in my opinion, is the runaway winner. He won the rookie scoring race by about 30 points over whoever was second, which I think was Kyle Jackson. He led the Rock in scoring. He finished top 10 in scoring in the league. And this is a guy who had never shot on a box lacrosse net until about October last year. So clearly has some lacrosse skills. He was MVP of the MLL last year and has been playing field lacrosse his whole life. But it was surprising to me how quickly he turned from, hey, he's probably going to be pretty good at the box game because he's good at the field game, into, holy crap, this guy's really good. Yeah, so he was exciting to watch all season, and I'm curious to know whether he was like, well, that was fun, I'm going back to MLL now, and we'll never see him in the NLL again, or if he was like, well, that was fun, I'm going to do that again next year. And speaking as a Rock fan, he would be welcome back on my team next year for sure. So Tom Schreiber. Tyler, you're next.
Yeah, my preseason pick, like you said, was Ryan Keenan. Number 1 overall pick is a good choice. But out of nowhere came the American playing in Toronto. Not in the Toronto sense, but in following in the footsteps of Ryan Boyle, who's a field lacrosse player from Princeton, gets into the NLL and gets a Rookie of the Year award. That'd be pretty amazing to see. Because that's just not where you expect a box lacrosse NLL player to come out of a place like Princeton and pick up the game so fast and produce. I don't know if he maybe caught people off guard, and so they didn't know what to expect, and he just produced. Maybe next year they'll get tape on him, as they say, and figure out how to shut him down. But I think athletically he can counter that and just produce because he's a great player, and it's not just about him taking advantage of weaknesses in systems. So when you can create your own points, the result is what it looks like with him on the floor. Is really cool to see. Melissa, what do you have?
So we're pretty much all in line on Rookie of the Year for our first picks, and for now, I'm also going to Tom Schreiber. It's hard to argue with a rookie that has 94 points on the season compared to Kyle Jackson, who's next with 60. He had 61 assists. He had 33 goals. Kyle Jackson only had 26 goals, so in 34 assists. He's standing just a huge amount above the rest of the rookie class. So I just can't see why he wouldn't. I mean, he has 83 loose balls compared to Kyle Jackson's 60. He's standing out there pretty much for all the reasons Tyler just highlighted. He's really strong. I don't know that. I think if people may have underestimated when he first came in the league, but he wouldn't still be continuing to make those waves. I think teams are just struggling to figure out how to shut him down right now. But we've seen that with McIntosh. We've seen that with drawing a blank on his name, but also played for the Rock, rookie a few seasons ago. It'll come to me probably out of the middle of nowhere. But it's rare, I think, that we see the expected rookie of the year become the rookie of the year. It always seems like we have a surprise that comes up. So definitely Tom Schreiber. Back to you, Graham.
All right. Next, we'll go to Coach of the Year, the Les Bartley Award. And before the season, I picked Troy Cordingley. I guess I figured that the Bandits would continue their winning ways from last season into this season, and they didn't. We talked about Cordingley a couple of weeks ago as to if the Bandits don't make the playoffs, is that the end for Cordingley? And we all decided no. He's still a good enough coach that the Bandits will likely keep him, and it's hard to blame him for the Bandits' season this year, especially considering they were without Dane Smith for a while, or without Ryan Benesh for a while, and Cosmo hasn't had the greatest season injury-wise either. So I'm not going with Cordingley. Instead, I'm going with Ed Como from Georgia. It's probably easy to say, look at all the players that he's got. Anybody could have coached them to a winning record, which may or may not be true. But when you've got players like that are so dynamic and make up their plays on the fly because they just see the way everything is going, and some of it I'm sure is set plays, but most of it is just all of those players have such good floor vision. They can see what's going on. They can adjust to what's going on, and you can't coach that. So it's this sort of a balancing act between these are the plays we want to set up. This is the way we want things to go. But at the same time, you guys just go do what you do. And so he has to sort of balance those two things. And I think Como did a great job of that. And their 13-5 record is a testament to that. So Ed Como was my choice for Coach of the Year. Tyler, you're next.
Sure. My preseason pick here was the Colorado 3 because nobody was officially the head coach. I still think they do good things, but they did not produce as high as Ed Como in Georgia. You kind of outlined all the points there, Graham, and I think that going back to Como's success with the Titans and making them do great things, he is a great coach in this league. He left for a little while, but he's back now, and when he's around, he's going to make somebody great, and Georgia's lucky to have him. Who do you have, Melissa?
All right, so I previously had Derek Keenan, which I expect he would probably still be considered, but I'm also changing to Ed Como because not only the acquisition of the players that he got, I guess that's the GM, but you still got to coach him, pretty much as Graham said. So I'm also going with Ed.
All right, and the last pick we made before the season was the general manager of the year, and like you said, Melissa, this is more about the coach is more about getting the players to do what you want them to do. The GM is getting the players onto your team and making trades and drafts and picking up free agents and that sort of stuff. And I guess I figured that Steve Dietrich had done a good job in setting up the Bandits. And well, given that the fact they missed the playoffs, that may not have been true. But as we said before, they had injury issues. And may have overachieved last year too, so who knows. But in any case, I'm going to go with John Arlotta from the Georgia Swarm. We've made fun of Arlotta in the past for trading anything and everything for draft picks. And most of that, I think, was related to finances. If you've got somebody like Ryan Benesh on your team and he's leading the league in scoring and he's doing all these great things, and then it comes time to renegotiate his contract, he's going to want max bucks, and he deserves it. And if your team can't afford the max bucks, you got to get rid of him and get whatever you can for him. And if you get a couple of first-round picks for him, then great. And it seemed that that's all he ever wanted from trades was first-round picks, and he got them. The Swarm had, 4 of the top 9 picks in at least 2 or 3 different drafts. It was insane. But after all those draft picks came in, look at the team he's got now. He's got the Thompson brothers. He's got Kyle Matisse. He's got Chad Tutton. He's got Kyle Jackson. He's got all these people that he's picked through Randy Stotts through the draft. And then to add to that, he traded for guys like Johnny Powless and Mike Poulin. And he just built one of the most exciting teams that we've seen in a long time. So good job to Mr. Arlotta, and he's my choice for GM. Tyler, who do you got?
He's got Shane Jackson, not Kyle Jackson.
Oh,
yeah.
One of those Jacksons. Michael Jackson, I can't remember.
There you go. Okay, so my preseason pick here was Georgia or Arlotta, because at the time he had picked up Mike Poulin, and I think that'd be a huge difference maker. When I was filling out the form, I wrote in Keenan because he dumped some players who were good players, but was able to put pieces back in and keep their first place in the West. But then I realized I'd want to stick with my guns, and so I'm going to stick with Georgia because Keenan took a first place team and kept in first place. Arlotta took a team that was growing and put the final pieces together. Theoretically, we don't know how it's going to finish in the playoffs, but he took them to first place. And so picking up Poulin, I think alone is the move, though. The Johnny Powless trade is quite good. And Jordan Hall trade when they had the injury to Jesse King. So things like that, it's proven now, 18 weeks later, that it was the right choice. So good job by them. Melissa, how about you?
All right. So I originally had Steve Dietrich for pretty much the reasons that Graham said too. And then I changed my new one. I'm going also with Arlotta, mostly because of the case that these two made. I think Derek Keenan also will be considered. I also think New England should actually be considered. That's who I had changed it to, because they've really made some strong inroads into the market and more thinking of the backside of the team, not necessarily the team they put on the floor, but what they're actually doing with the team in New England and really trying to get that going. They've had some success. So they're definitely putting an exciting product on the floor. So that's where my brain was thinking. But I definitely think Arlotta, you really kind of overlook some of the things that he's done until somebody really outlines it. You're like, oh, yeah, kind of stupid to be considering anybody else right now. So we changed that. All right, back to you, Graham.
All right, so that was it for the picks that we made before the season. Other categories that we were going to look at were Executive of the Year and Unsung Hero. Now, Executive of the Year is tough because
we also have one hidden up above GM of the Year.
Oh, I missed that one. You're right. Okay, I will continue with Executive just because that's what I was talking about. But this one's tough because it usually goes an owner or a VP or somebody of that nature, and we don't know what goes on behind the scenes. In fact, the winner 2 or 3 years ago was like the vice president of finance or something for the Roughnecks, a guy I had never heard of at the time, and whose name I don't think have heard since then. So good job to you for whatever you do, but I don't know who you are. So of executives in any of these teams that meet that sort of criteria, and I have no way of knowing who they would be. So I skipped the executive of the year. You guys each put somebody down, so I'll let you talk.
Sure. I put down the Rush for
sorry.
whoever.
No.
Oh,
Sorry,
yes.
Tyler goes first. I apologize.
Yeah, that's right. Going with you across the page. So I'm going to whoever at the Rush figured out how to pack their stadium. Going to sellouts in their second year is a hugely important piece of their franchise health. And if there's somebody they can pinpoint and nominate for this award that related to that, that should be the person getting it. How about you, Melissa?
So I also picked that it will be somebody from the Rush for pretty much the exact reasons that Tyler just said. The Rush are just having a phenomenal season. They're, unlike some of the other teams, they also have a full house to go with their phenomenal season. And I do think that is just huge. They're really playing well up in Saskatchewan. It was a tough move, in many ways, but they're being very successful. They have a very passionate fan base. And that just doesn't come naturally the first year. So there's something going on from the executive side to help that. And so that's why I think it'll be somebody from the Rush.
Definitely a good choice. The winner of the Executive of the Year award last year was Lee Genier, who was the president of the Rush, basically for the reasons you guys said, for packing that building every game. And he has since left the Rush, and I don't know who's replaced him. But as great as their attendance was last year, it was better this year. So a 2-year in a row winner for the Rush would not be unwarranted. Going back to the one that I missed, and that is Offensive Player of the Year. And this one's a little weird because most of the time it ends up being the MVP who is the Offensive Player of the Year. A goalie has won once back, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. I think it was Steve Dietrich's. I keep calling him Dietrich's. Steve Dietrich won MVP 1 year, and Jim Veltman won 1 year as well. But other than that, it's pretty much an offensive player who wins it. So my Offensive Player of the Year, I'm going to go with Lyle Thompson, who is the leading scorer. Shout out to Corey Small and Mark Matthews, who are, I guess, from right 2 and 3, for also having outstanding offensive seasons. Tyler, you're next.
Yeah, it seems most likely that it would be Lyle Thompson, as he's the leading point getter in the league. That's kind of the best offensive player. But I'm going to go ahead and go a little homer and pick Corey Small because he set a franchise record in points for the Stealth, 111, 104, 111, I think. But it was the most they've ever had. So I think recognition of that would be a great way to give to him via the Offensive Player of the Year. How about you, Melissa?
All right. So I'm deviating a little bit. I think Lyle Thompson is definitely one that should be considered. I think Corey Small is also one that should be considered. But I'm actually going to go with Curtis Dixon, who had 54 goals, and he had 54 assists, which is pretty close up there with the other guys. He had 108 points on the season to Lyle Thompson's 116, and Corey Small's 111. So overall, he's right up there, but 54 goals to the other two's 46 and 45. I think it's just going to eke him out just a little. He probably will not win because it seems traditionally a lot of those kinds of awards go to players that are playing on teams in the playoffs and that are being successful in the playoffs, even though the playoffs are not supposed to apply. So I don't think Curtis Dixon will win, but I'm still picking him. So, back to you, Griff.
All right, and our last award, and this is a tough one, is the Unsung Hero. And we never really defined exactly what that means, but the way I think of it is somebody who is instrumental in their team's success, but not necessarily somebody who comes to mind when you think about it. Like, if you look at the Georgia Swarm, you immediately think, okay, well, Lyle Thompson is instrumental to their success. Well, that's definitely true. But if you take away the people who are top of the score sheet kind of thing, who else is involved in their success that you may not think of right away? So my choice this year, I'm going to go with Cliff Smith, who had a good year for the Stealth. He's played a bunch of offense. I think, in my mind anyway, he's primarily an offensive player. But in the last year or two for the Stealth, they've said, you know what, we'd prefer if you come out the back door and play more a defensive role. And obviously, given his offensive skills, he's a good transition player as well because he can get up the floor and score. But he can play offense, he can play defense, he can play transition, he can do whatever they need him to do. He's got some leadership skills. He's been around for a long time and definitely has some grit and toughness in there. And I think he's been important to the success that the Stealth has seen this year. So I'm going with Cliff Smith. Tyler, what do you have?
Yeah, Cliff has a lot of heart, and I love him. He's fun to see play and hang out with. But my unstrung player of the year kind of wanted to be Teddy Jenner because all he does and watching him call games has been great, but there's nothing to do on the floor there. And I had two players in Georgia that were kind of coming to my mind. One is Jordan Hall. I think having him move down, bring his experience to the team and fill a need they had on offense, and he gets very timely goals and generally settles them down and calms that high-powered team that otherwise can, maybe if they get going but they're a little on the wrong track, they could get sidetracked detrimentally, but he'll stop them from doing that. But my choice ends up being Mike Poulin and what he did in the goal to, again, fill another gap where they've had goalies the last few years and they've kind of been musical chairs or carousel. They've had a lot of people playing goal in there, but he brought experience from his years with the Roughnecks, and I think he was the missing piece. As much as Jordan Hall helped, he was backfilling somebody who could have done what he did, but they had not had a solid goalie in the last few years in Georgia. If ever, going back to Nick Patterson, maybe that's a long time ago. And Poulin came in and made the difference, and they're the best team in the East right now, best team in the league. I think, is that right? It's a rush. Anyways, they wouldn't have done it without Mike Poulin as quietly sitting back and making that difference as the unstrung hero, whatever it is. I think if we had sponsorship, it's the unstrung hero, but we say the unsung hero. Go ahead, Melissa.
All right. So for me, I'm actually going with Corey Small, which seems really counterintuitive, especially when you listen to what Tyler Graham said. But when you hear about all the offensive players, Corey Small's name actually doesn't come up very often. You hear about the Thompson brothers, and you hear about Mark Matthews, and you hear about Chris Dixon and Dane Dobie and Kevin Crowley and Sean Evans and Mark Stainhouse. And especially with Stainhouse and Evans breaking some records this year, their name's been mentioned a lot. But Corey Small is up there in the stats, and it seems like he's just often overlooked when people are talking about the offensive players. So I think he's been very instrumental in Vancouver getting where they are right now. He's just been easy to overlook, probably because when Vancouver was struggling, you're not really going to be looking at their players because, well, Vancouver's not winning games, Calgary's not winning games, so they can't have top players, right? Well, no, they really do. And so now that all of a sudden the playoff picture has changed, I would say Corey Small was a huge part of that. And so I definitely think he's an unsung hero.
Even when you think about the Stealth, offensive players, the first name that comes to mind is Reese Dutch.
Or Dane Dobie. Or no, that's Calgary. Never mind.
Yeah. But yeah, so even now you think Reese Dutch and Small led the team in scoring this year, and it was the first time that since 2011 that anybody but Reese Dutch has done that. So he didn't exactly come out of nowhere, but you're right, he doesn't seem to get. It's sort of happening more often now, but for a while it certainly didn't seem like he was getting the recognition that he deserved with the scoring he was doing. All right, so that's it for the awards. We will move on now to our predictions and final standings for the year. No surprise, Tyler wins the year at 47-29, despite having a 2-4 record in the last week. And I'm only pointing that because I went 4-2 in the last week. So me beating Tyler in a particular week is a big deal for some of us. So Tyler went 2-4. He is at 47-29 on the season. Melissa right behind him. She was 3-3 this past week and is at 43-38. And I was 4-2. Did not make the 500 level, so I was at 37-44 on the season. Yeah, so we'll move on to the division semifinals. And I think for this week it won't matter, but I think what we have done in the past is for predictions is we will predict the winner of the series rather than the winner of each game. In the first round, it doesn't matter because there's only one game anyway. But rather than saying if it's Toronto versus Georgia in the second round, rather than saying Georgia will win game 1, Toronto will win game 2, and then Georgia will win the mini game, that's a little too specific. So I think we'll just pick the winner of the series. But like I said, for this round, there's only one game anyway. And as the season winner, Tyler, you get to go first.
Thanks. Great. Couple good games this weekend. Toronto at New England. No, sorry, New England at Toronto. I apologize. And Colorado at Vancouver. Toronto finished strong to get that home playoff game when they were down in that game. So they got a lot of momentum. New England played a tough game against the Stealth and lost that home playoff game, which was pretty much a gut punch. As far as picking the game, this is a hard one, but I'm going to go ahead and pick New England. I just feel like there's a chance that they can get rolling and be frustrated about what happened last weekend and forget it. We're not going to let that happen again. And they have great experience playing in one-goal games throughout the season, and playoff games can be tight, those one-goal kind of experiences, and they can leverage that experience they have and get the ball to Sean Evans and Kevin Crowley and get a win in a tight game like that late. So I have New England winning the game. How about you, Melissa?
All right. So I also have New England winning. This was tough. We've seen really good play and really bad play recently from both teams. And so it's which team's going to show up. They both have players with playoff experience. So you can't even say, well, this is a rookie team or something. I think New England, whenever they have gone down, they've definitely come back really strong the next game. As Tyler said, they have a whole lot of one-goal games. This one's probably going to come down to the wire, and that experience can be crucial. But I think they've just been playing strong, and just kind of want to cheer the Black Wolves too. Sorry, Graham. You want to go with your pick?
All right. It may be a homer pick and it may not, but I'm going to go with the Rock on this one. I'm looking over the Black Wolves season, and they are 2-0 against the Rock. So that doesn't bode well for the Rock winning. One they won here and one they won in New England. But they were both one-goal games. One was in overtime. So they won 10-9 and they won 15-14. So it does look like this will be a close game. This is not surprising. And I'm going to hope that we get a huge crowd in Toronto, and the home team or the home team crowd spurs the Rock on to a victory. And so I'm going to go for the Rock on that one. And partially because I feel terrible if I pick against the Rock and they win, then I feel like a jerk. But okay, so that's the East. In the West, we have Colorado at Vancouver. And Tyler, you can go first again.
Sure. I'd say all signs are pointing to a Vancouver victory here. They won 3 out of 4 against the Mammoth in the regular season. They're kind of surging or peaking right now. Several wins in a row, best team performances of the year. And based on that, I'm picking Vancouver. It's going to be the first stealth home playoff game I've missed since I started following the team, because I'm not going to go up for this one. I'm holding out that they can get some better ones, and I don't spend all my travel budget on the first round playoff game if they make it to the finals. And I can keep my streak alive. I've never missed a stealth finals game, so we'll see how that plays out. But it'll start this weekend when the Stealth win and beat the Mammoth again. Melissa, what do you got?
All right, so I'm also picking the Stealth. Mammoth just are very, very hit or miss right now, more miss than hit. And they seem to just not do well in the playoffs. They have been knocked out in the first round nearly every single time. I think, as we've talked about, the only year that they made it past the first round, they made it to the Cup, and that was 2006. So that does not bode well for a team that has gone to the playoffs most of their history.
On the upside, you're not playing Calgary.
Yes, we're not playing Calgary. As I said, my awesome last week. We're not playing Calgary. Except for the fact that Vancouver is the other team that knocks us out of the playoffs. So, not much better. But Vancouver's peaking at the right time. Colorado has not been looking strong the past couple of weeks, in my opinion. They may have some injuries out. I'm just not feeling very confident in them. So I think Vancouver's going to take it. So, what about you, Graham?
I'm going to go with Vancouver as well. Looking over Colorado's record, they've been quite inconsistent. Like you said, they win a couple and they lose a couple and they win a couple and lose a couple. They don't have any losing streaks longer than 2 this season, but they also don't have any winning streaks longer than 2. So winning streaks are what you need in the playoffs. And Vancouver's on a 3-game winning streak right now. They've done really well at home the second half of this season, which we haven't been able to say for a couple of years now. But yeah, they've got all the momentum. They've got all the confidence. I'm going to go with the Stealth in that game as well. So if we are, if we're right, it's going to be a Vancouver-Saskatchewan final in the West. And 2/3 of us think it will be a Georgia-New England final in the East. And I'm going to go with Georgia-Toronto. And looking forward to the games this weekend. It should be fun. So this was also a fun episode with all of our awards picks. I enjoyed that. So hopefully you did as well. So that's it for another episode of Addicted to Lacrosse. For Tyler and Melissa, I'm Graham. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.